Hi, my name is Abby Jones. I am the daughter of a pastor. I kind of grew up in that whole arena. That's part of my story. I think that's probably the beginning of my story. I was raised in a very loving home. I definitely saw Jesus throughout. I think that's where I first kind of understood who Jesus was. So I think that's a really integral part of my story because I knew who he was the whole time. I kind of have a stereotypical bring up with pastor's daughter, went to lots of different churches. I was a worship leader. I was a small group leader. I kind of checked off all those boxes as a Christian, if you will. And it wasn't until later in life that I understood that I just really didn't know who Jesus was, and I didn't understand the impact and the gravity of his love for me and just how real he was. I never saw that. I remember being little and thinking, why don't I feel God? Why don't I hear God? Why does it seem so easy for everybody else? Why is it so hard for me to pray? Why is it so hard for me to to feel like another Christian? And I always doubted myself, and I just felt crazy. And I think it was just because I didn't get it at that point. And kind of flash forward to my adulthood is when I started getting really high up into the corporate world. And I kind of climbed my way up, and all the while having full control over that, kind of disregarding any kind of feedback that I heard from God or from family. And I just continued to climb, and that really made me into a person that I am not proud of. I think that I was told to do things that were not me. It went against all of my gut, my morals, and who I thought I was as a Christian, but continued to do it. With that, I began down a really dark path of anxiety and depression. I've had that my whole life. I can look back now knowing what a panic attack and what anxiety is, and seeing my 10-year-old self experiencing that, but just didn't know what it was. But I just always knew that it felt really uncomfortable. And now as an adult, I know that as anxiety and depression. And I struggled with that my whole life. And the whole time I was so mad at God. I just said, God, I did the whole thing. When I was 6, I said that I was a Christian. I got baptized. And I have the perfect family to kind of usher me into being a Christian, but it just never really made sense to me in my head. I didn't feel a difference. I didn't feel a change. And so throughout the anxiety and depression, mad at God the whole way, I developed a really bad drinking problem. And so for 5 years of my life, essentially, I was a slave to alcohol, and that was something that I thought was a solution to my anxiety and depression, but newsflash, it's not. It definitely makes things worse, a lot worse. And so I'm probably the darkest time ever was about 2 years ago in my life, when I was the highest I was at in corporate America, making the most money I've ever made, doing all of the things that you should see as a successful person, being able to provide for my family. But inside, I was completely destroyed. I was letting alcohol take over my life, not listening to any cues that God gave me to change, and just completely on a path of destruction and just terrible, just absolutely terrible. Until one day, which I think that this is truly where I met Jesus for the first time. And sorry, it's crazy to think about, because knowing that the environment that I was brought up in was an environment of showing me who Jesus was, and me not understanding that, and then to be literally on my knees at one point, and God physically telling me, you're done here. That's enough. That's enough. I'm taking you with me. And I know it sounds crazy, and I've heard so many people's stories of testimonies of having these grandeur encounters with God, and I never believed them because I had never had it or seen it myself. But on one night when I was coming home from work, drunk, and I was driving home from Atlanta, and I just pulled over to the side of the road, and I just felt God tell me in my spirit that my time was up doing what I was doing. And I felt such a peace, but also such a terror of how my life was going to be changing. And that's the last day I ever drank. And that was about a year and a half ago. And I'm not going to say that it's been easy since then, but it's without a doubt, I know that that was a God-ordained experience, and that's something that I've never been able to experience before. And it's been the most beautiful, life-changing, rocking of my world kind of experience with God that I've ever had in my life. And I can say without a doubt that that was the night that I got saved. I ended up going home to my husband and told him that I was no longer drinking. And of course his reaction was, he didn't believe me because I hadn't proved that before. And I said, no, I want to sit, I want to pray right now, and I want to beg God for mercy and to give him my whole heart and soul. So I did that and ended up detoxing for 5 days. Would not recommend doing that by yourself. And it was awful, and I thought I was going to die. And I ended up surviving. I ended up getting better. My anxiety and depression dissipated a few months after that. And I ended up quitting my job. I heard the voice of God tell me, this profession that you've been in for 12 years is no longer serving you. And this is a lot of the reason why your mental state is at where it's at. And this is not serving others. This is not serving yourself. It's not serving me. So I listened, and kicking and screaming, because that's the one thing my whole life that I felt like I could control. I was all about controlling my life, controlling my environment, and making sure that I was doing the best for myself. And this was the scariest moment because, of course, God said, I need you to give up all control, and I need you to give me the wheel. Like literally, Jesus, take the wheel, because it was rough. And I said, yeah, okay, that sounds fine. So I listened to him, and I quit my job with nothing, no backup. I've been working since I was 13, so that was really jarring. I have a 6-year-old son. He's beautiful, and I've always wanted to just provide for him. So my husband fully supported me in this, and I just took some time to figure out, God, where do you want me to be? I have no clue who I am. I feel like I've been rebirthed. I mean, I quite literally was, as a new person, and I just want to understand where you want me to go. So with that, crazy enough, I ended up getting into communications with a gentleman that blessed me with the opportunity to open an intensive outpatient substance abuse clinic, which, it still feels surreal saying that. It feels insane, but we are opening in Houston, Georgia, and that is my absolute biggest dream, is to take my story of pain and suffering and to turn it into something that's beautiful and that points people directly to Jesus and everything that he could do for you. Because I was a skeptic. I didn't think that was possible. I thought that those were things that only happened to certain people. But I'm living proof that if you truly let God take over your life, there's so many more beautiful things than you could even imagine. So my goal is absolutely to be able to support and help and heal the people of Jackson County and the surrounding areas, and with my substance abuse clinic. And I just pray that God blesses that, and I know that he will, because he quite literally plopped that in my lap. I know that it's going to be hard, and I know that being a Christian and being a Christ follower is not something that's easy, but it's a lot easier with him in your life than trying to control everything. So like I said before, I'm a pastor's kid, so I've been to so many churches, and I don't think I've ever had a period in my life where I haven't been to church. But every church that I went to was, it just didn't feel like I totally belonged there. And I think that this church came in a really pivotal time, right after I got sober. And when I came in, I'll never forget, to answer your question, I guess, how I found it is I was just Googling of what churches were around the area. And I've had a couple people that had mentioned Galilee to me too. They said that it was a great church, that was good, had a great kids experience and a kids ministry. And so I found Galilee just through a mixture of social media and from friends. But I'll never forget whenever I came in, the first time I had signed up my son Walker for the kids ministry. And when I went to the front door, there was a lady there and she said, "Oh, is this Walker?" And I was taken aback because I said, "How in the world would they know who my son is?" And I said, "Yeah, how did you know?" And she goes, "Well, I just noticed that there was a new person that signed up and I'd never seen you before. So I figured this was Walker." And I was like, that is the coolest thing ever, because one thing that I feel like church misses on so much is the authenticity and the willingness to put in that connection to people. And so that's really what I've experienced here. And that's honestly what kept us coming back. And then, of course, you can tell that Galilee doesn't put things just for check boxes on, their website to say that they did this, that they really put them in action. And I've seen that firsthand by how they treat people, how they love people, how they serve people, and how there's no judgment, no matter where your walk with God is. Me and my dad, completely transparently, we did not have a great relationship growing up. He had a lot of anger issues. He had a lot of, I think, and he says it's a lot just because of the church and how there was so much hypocrisy and there was a lot of, working in a church, probably not this church, but there's a lot of leadership issues. It's just, there's a lot of demand and it's just really taxing. So, I think he harbored a lot of anger and resentment and just a lot of anger issues towards that. So honestly, we did not have a great relationship growing up. So we're not as close as I would hope we would be. But I know that whenever I did come to him and tell him, he was the first person to Google like the closest rehab facility and to tell me that he was so proud of me and to tell me that, he couldn't wait for people to hear my testimony of what God had done. So there was nothing but support and love from my whole family from the moment I told them, because I'd hid it really well for a long time. I definitely was the stereotypical alcoholic that could hide things really well without people noticing. I think I didn't hide it as well from my husband as I thought that I did, but yeah, from my family, from my extended family, they had no clue. They knew that I really liked wine and alcohol, but they didn't know the extent of how much it like insidiously had taken over me. And so I think there was a lot of grief and a lot of shock whenever I initially told them. They didn't understand. I mean, they went from thinking they had a daughter that, drank whenever we came over to like, hey, I'm detoxing because I've drank from morning till night for 5 years. Like, that was very different than what they had. So I think there was a lot of shock. There was a little bit of anger, disbelief. But once it settled, they were so warm, and they were my biggest cheerleaders on keeping me sober. So I think the most important thing for any human or any father to daughter, but especially being in this kind of position where you have to have everything tied up, look nice, and, present yourself a certain way. I think the biggest thing for anybody is authenticity, and to be the same person you are at church as you are with your family, and to not let the politics or the energies of what you feel like you need to look like be different than what you are in your home life. Because I think if you look at who Jesus is, he was the same no matter what. And honestly, he didn't care about any of the religious politics. He wanted to love on people. He wanted to show people his love, his light, and his goodness. And I think that if you abide by those principles of being authentic and truly looking at who Jesus was, and not having it filtered through the lens of a stereotypical Christian church, which I hate to say that, but it is what it is. And I think if you just look at, these are Jesus's values, these are his principles, how can I best live like Jesus Christ? I think that you can do no wrong in your walk with your family and in church, and that being a very easy, cohesive marriage of two different people, if that makes sense. I mean, that's my biggest advice. I think I've thought about that so much because I felt so alone in everything. I thought that I was an anomaly. I thought that nobody else was like me, especially with alcoholism and any kind of addiction. I think that there's such a stigma, specifically with men and substance abuse disorders. I think when you think of an alcoholic, your mind automatically goes to someone on a bench, an older man that is poorly dressed with a brown bag in his hand. But substance abuse is so much more than that. It's your PTA mom. It's your soccer teacher. It's your sister. It's your friend that's sitting 2 rows down from you in church. I mean, there's so many people that have struggled. And through me being so open and honest on all of my social media to my family and friends, what I've seen is that people come in droves to me going, oh my gosh, like deep breath. Like I'm not alone. I feel like I can relate to you. And I think that the biggest thing I would tell myself is, one, you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not unredeemable. God sees you right where you're at, and he's building your story exactly how he sees fit, and how you're going to best be able to serve people after your story. But I think I would just tell myself that you matter, that your story matters, and that you're not alone. And probably to ask for help a little sooner, because I think when you destigmatize it, it takes away the fear of reaching out. Because my biggest fear was, oh my gosh, I'm the pastor's kid. I'm a woman. I, have a son that I'm very involved in the school with. I'm so terrified of what people are going to think of me. And God doesn't see it that way. I think that's been the biggest mind-blowing thing is God wants you to be healthy. He wants you to be well. And there's nothing new under the sun. So everyone, this is happening everywhere. And unfortunately, and just to be completely authentic and honest and reach out for help much sooner than what you did. Because I truly believe that, and to not be ashamed, because I truly believe that my story is going to be able to help so many people. And 3 years ago, I would not have ever thought that. I thought this would be a story that I would have to shove deep down in the depths of the abyss and shame myself for it. But funny enough, God kind of turned it to where I'm sharing my story, and my profession is going to be my story. So that's what I would say.